Chapter 750, Lose Her Life Savings. When Xue Li saw that Hou Mao Feng wasn't going to give in, he glanced unpleasantly at Yuan Wan. If she hadn't forcefully snatched this task away from Qin Ruoxi, this wouldn't have happened. At this moment, the three experts were anxious. They took turns trying to persuade Hou Mao Feng, but he was completely unmoved. The three of them seemed to blame Yuan Wan for it and said, "Boss Hou, this batch of raw stones is indeed very rare. I saw a fraction of what the stone may contain through the small window that was polished off, and it's top-quality glass jade. It's highly possible that it will be a jadeite of the highest quality or be fully green. It's not only Boss Huang but even our competitor is fighting for it. It took a great deal of effort from Director Qin to convince Hou Mao Feng to reserve it for us. I'm afraid all her efforts are going down the drain, huh? She shouldn't brag about her abilities if she doesn't even have them. Does she really think that by having connections with Chairman Si, everyone will give her face?" Xue Li and the three experts took turns negotiating with Hou Mao Feng while Yuan Wan didn't participate in it at all and sat calmly in the corner, sipping her tea. Yuan Wan's nonchalant attitude made Xue Li and the others hopping mad. Watching this situation unfold, 11 started to worry. "Miss Wan Wan, do you want me to contact housekeeper Su and ask him for some backup? Maybe Boss Ho will give us some face then." Yuan Wan placed her teacup down and said casually, "No need for that." On the other side, Hou Mao Feng wasn't going to give in, so Xue Li gave Qin Ruoxi a call. "Boss Ho, please give me a moment, I'll call our director Qin." Xue Li said something to Qin Ruoxi over the phone and seemed to relax a little. After that, she walked over to Hou Mao Feng. "Boss Ho, our director Qin will speak to you personally." Hou Mao Feng took the phone and there was a drastic change in his attitude. "Hello, Miss Qin. Didn't we agree that you would be coming down personally to check the goods? Why was there a sudden change? It's such an important matter, how could I simply hand it to someone else? Do you think this is reasonable at all?" "Oh, Miss Qin, what are you saying? How could I not give you face? All right then, since you put it this way, I obviously don't have any issues on my side." Hou Mao Feng chatted with Qin Ruoxi for about 10 minutes before hanging up. Xue Li walked over quickly. "Boss Ho, so..." Hou Mao Feng put on airs and said reluctantly, "Since Miss Qin gave me her word, I obviously don't have any issues. Follow me to view the goods then." Sure. "Sorry to trouble you, Boss Ho." Xue Li heaved a sigh of relief. The three experts smiled. "Sure enough, Miss Qin has her ways. When we came down with Miss Qin in the past, we never had so many issues. Now we have to tolerate Boss Ho's bad mood." Shortly after, Hou Mao Feng got some people to move the raw stone Qin Ruoxi reserved. The shop assistant pulled 2 trailers over. One of them had a couple of rocks on it, each weighing around 10 caddies, while the other trailer had a single large boulder which weighed over 100 caddies. There were only 2 things to look for when gambling in precious stones: first, the type of rock, commonly known as the grade of the raw stone, and secondly, the origin of the raw stone. Generally, if it looked good and came from a reliable origin, there was usually a higher chance of it being green. And the only way to determine this was through experience. Yuan Wan did some homework lately and could tell this material came from the Huika origin. Most materials that originated from there were like gray elephant skin. Oh, so it was this piece of rock, the rock that caused Qin Ruoxi to lose her life savings. Chapter 751, Who Said I Wanted It? Huika was one of the largest mines and it was also an old one. It had very few reserves at present, which made the large boulder even rarer. What was rarer was that not only did this boulder have many black spots, but there was also a distinct green python belt running through it. There was a saying that went like this: "Green comes with the black," which meant that raw stones with black spots on them had a much higher chance of containing green jade. As for the python, the majority of them were formed from hard jade minerals that made up the jadeite. Hence, it often protruded and formed a multicolored belt. There were many different kinds of python belts and each kind represented the type of jade that might appear. But as long as there was a python belt, it meant there was indeed jadeite inside. Looking proud, Ho Mao Feng pointed at the 2 piles of stones and explained delightfully, I spent a large amount of money to clean this pile of black sand. For this big one here, you can already see a tiny window. For those who are in the know, I don't have to say much about it. You may go ahead and take a look at it. It's a fantastic stone that originated from Hui Ka, so it's absolutely one of the finest materials. If it wasn't for Miss Qin, I would have kept it for myself. Xue Li cupped his hands to show his appreciation. In fear of any more misfortunes, he hastily asked, Thank you, Boss Ho. Boss Ho, just name us a price, and we'll deal with payment immediately. Ho Mao Feng reluctantly asked his shop assistant to bring the account book over and negotiated the price with Xue Li and the group of experts. The devotee suddenly appeared in front of Yuan Wan. He leaned towards her and said, Boss, I think they're ignoring you. Spray of flowers, boss, should we teach them a little lesson? A punch for only $88. Nameless Nye coughed and the 2 of them instantly retreated without a word. Nameless Nye said, Famous Yi, just let us know if you need us to do something. Although we can't use any weapons or resort to violence, we still have many other ways of getting back at them. Yuan Wan chuckled softly. Ha, it's alright, thank you. Ignore me. I'm afraid that's impossible. Without her signature, the money wouldn't be paid out. After a very long negotiation, they were finally done. Xue Li brought the bill over to Yuan Wan and said directly, Miss Yi, everything has been settled. You just have to sign here. Behind him, Ho Mao Feng still looked very unwilling. I agreed to do this for the sake of Miss Qin this time. If you casually bring other people here again, I won't be so easygoing. No problem, Boss Ho. No problem. Miss Yi, hurry up. This is a top-quality raw stone. The price is very fair and there are so many people interested, but Boss Ho didn't sell it to them. Yuan Wan casually took a sip of tea and placed her teacup on the table lightly. Then her eyes swept across Xue Li and the others who were rushing her to sign the bill, including the reluctant Ho Mao Feng, and she said indifferently, Sign? Sign what? Xue Li's face turned gloomy. Obviously this bill to purchase the raw stone. Yuan Wan knitted her brows. Who said? I'm buying these raw stones. Upon hearing what Yuan Wan said, everyone was stunned. Xue Li's face was completely black. Miss Yi, what do you mean? You're not buying it? Yuan Wan smiled faintly and said slowly, From the beginning, you guys were the only ones who wanted to buy it and it was also you, Deputy Director Xue, who insisted on coming to this store. I merely followed you to take a look. Who said I want to buy from this store? Xue Li was in complete disbelief. You, Ho Mao Feng's expression changed completely. Xue Li, what is the meaning of this? After so many hours here, all of you were just fooling with me. Chapter 752, I have the final say. Yuan Wan's words provoked 1,000 ripples of waves. Xue Li, the group of experts and the owner of Hui Chui Workshop, Ho Mao Feng, all altered their facial expressions dramatically. Boss Ho, please don't be mad. There must be a misunderstanding somewhere. I'll definitely handle it. Xue Li placated Ho Mao Feng while speaking to Yuan Wan in a tense tone. Miss Yi, I know you have hard feelings against Director Qin, but you should keep your personal and work affairs separate. You didn't even discuss anything with us and made a decision on your own recklessly. What's the meaning of this? 11 stood up when he heard that and said, Deputy Director Xue, you guys didn't discuss anything with Miss Wan Wan before making a decision. Aren't you the one making reckless decisions? Xue Li took a deep breath. Fine, since you want to have a discussion, let's have a proper discussion right now. I've already mentioned all the reasons we should purchase this. This batch of materials is top-notch and Director Qin spent a lot of time and effort on this. Yuan Wan supported her forehead with her hand but she didn't interrupt him at all. She simply listened to Xue Li's eloquent speech about Qin Ruoxi's merits. After he was done speaking, Yuan Wan mumbled, Are you done? May I get a word in? I am the person in charge of procuring the stones, so I have the final say. Shueli nearly choked on a mouthful of blood. She's using her power to crush me, why bother reasoning with her? 11 was initially worried about how Yuanwan was going to deal with this, and he didn't expect her to be so simple and cruel. He couldn't help but cough lightly and rub his nose. Did that really work? In the next moment, they heard a cheer as if a cheerleader team was shouting their slogan in unison. Boss famous, as pretty as a flower, pretty 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 pretty, beautiful 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 beautiful. PFFFF, Yuanwan spat her tea out. This was what these fools meant by getting back at them without using violence. Shueli's face turned nasty when he looked at the 5 people who had been following Yuanwan around, adding fuel to the fire. Seeing as the atmosphere was becoming deadlocked, the 3 experts attempted to persuade Yuanwan. Miss Yi, please consider things carefully. Even though the task isn't critical this time, it's hard to find a good piece of jade. The jewelry business has been waiting for more than half a year, and if we miss this opportunity and let others buy this batch of goods, we'll take huge losses. A loud bang resounded. Ho Mao Feng had been listening the whole time, and he suddenly slammed the table, throwing a huge fit. This is ridiculous. What high-sounding sentiments you got there? I turned away businesses who offered me a much higher price and kept this batch of goods for you, yet you despise Hui Chui Workshop's goods. Mr. Xue, is this what you meant by sincerity? Shueli glanced angrily at Yuanwan and hurriedly said, misunderstanding, this is a misunderstanding. Boss Ho, let me explain. Ho Mao Feng's face turned cold as he waved Shueli off. Forget it, you don't have to say any more. Anyway, I didn't want to hand this batch of goods over to anybody except Miss Qin herself, so since none of you have any idea of what's good for you, I don't have to give any face to you. Please leave. The shop assistant looked at Yuanwan in disdain and spoke in a sharp voice. This lady over here doesn't understand the market at all. You think precious stone stores are everywhere in H City and the streets are filled with goods, huh? For such a top-notch material, you might not even be able to obtain it after waiting several years. Do you have any idea how many people want these goods? Chapter 753, Never woke up later. The moment the shop assistant said that, a robust and prosperous man dressed in a golden silk button Mandarin jacket smiled and walked in with 2 walnuts in his hand. Oh Boss Ho, what happened? Why are you fuming? Shueli's expression changed when he saw that person. Shit! It's Huang Shi Xian. The 3 experts panicked as well. What's Huang Shi Xian doing here? We already made it clear that the C family wants this batch of goods. Do you still need to ask? He must have gotten the news. So soon. What do you think, huh? There are so many people eyeing this batch of goods, who would give up? But this woman is amazing, she actually pushed it away. Oh no, this Huang Shi Xian isn't an easy person to deal with. I'm afraid our goods are gone this time. The shop assistant glared at Yuanwan and the others before he smiled widely and welcomed Huang Shi Xian warmly. Boss Huang. What brings you here? Quick, come in. Huang Shi Xian put on a regretful expression and said, I heard Boss Ho would be signing the contract with C Corporation Jewelry today, but I still couldn't let myself give up just like that, so I came over to ask Boss Ho if you had any other goods. It's fine even if they are of a slightly lower grade. Ho Mao Feng immediately sneered when he heard that. He was obviously still hopping mad. Huang Shi Xian was elated when he saw Ho Mao Feng's expression. Seems like the intel was right. The shop assistant glanced disapprovingly at Yuanwan and the others and said, Boss Huang, don't talk about it. We were about to collect payment when someone backed out and didn't want the goods anymore. Oh, that actually happened, huh? Don't they know the quality of this batch of goods? Boss Ho actually spent a lot of effort to secure these raw stones from the auction. That stone from Huika already has a small window open and it's a glass type. There's a chance it might be an emerald green imperial jade. Huang Shi Xian exclaimed. Ho Mao Feng turned to Yuanwan and the others and said plainly, At first, Miss Qin Rua she was supposed to be here, but this ignorant flower vase came instead to discuss business with me and she wasn't willing to buy my goods. I heard rumors the master of the Sea family was so intelligent and marvelous, so much for that, huh? No matter what these people were saying about her, Yuanwan didn't care at all. She sipped her tea casually and appeared to be waiting for something. Only when she heard this comment did her eyes turn colder. Huang Shi Xian turned and sized Yuanwan up. I heard the master of the Sea family has a stunning beauty by his side. He didn't hesitate to oppose all the elders in the family and was so obsessed with the woman that he ruined his health. So it's true, Yuanwan, they're so gossipy even in the business world, huh? Obsessed with the woman that he ruined his health. In order to take care of Si Han's health, after being reborn, I've never woken up later than him aside from that one time, alright? Hearing all these nasty comments, Shueli walked to Yuanwan and reminded her sternly, Miss Yi, this person is the rival of C Corporation Jewelry. This is boss Huang Shi Xian of Fortune Hall. Previously, he kept trying to snatch this batch of goods away from us and Director Qin had to make plans months before she was able to settle things with Boss Ho. If you insist on not signing this agreement, you better think of the consequences. Yuanwan waved her fair and slender fingers and her eyes swept across Huang Shi Xian and Ho Maofeng as she scoffed coldly, consequences? From what I see, this batch of goods just looks nice on the outside. There's nothing great inside, one might even lose a fortune from buying these. Chapter 754. I think I'm pretty lucky. The moment Yuanwan said that, the group of 5 started chanting the slogan once again. Boss famous, as pretty as a flower, pretty 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 pretty, beautiful 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 beautiful. All of you. At this moment, Ho Maofeng was exploding in fury. Initially, he was just giving her some attitude since she was, after all, from the Sea family. When they apologized and acknowledged their mistake, he was still willing to sell it to them. But he didn't expect that this woman would be so incredibly insolent. Huang Shi Xian was obviously overjoyed at this situation. He hurriedly went forward to create disharmony. This lady here, do you know that the goods in Boss Ho's store are the best in Myanmar? And you actually said this batch of raw stones won't have anything great inside? What exactly did you mean by that, huh? Currently, Yuanwan was akin to a good-for-nothing prince with a gang of bodyguards following her around. She scanned the rocks on the trailers and said unhurriedly, I said, this batch of goods will certainly collapse. In the precious stone trade, betting that it would rise meant it would yield profits and betting that it would collapse meant it was a loss. Yuanwan was extremely blunt. Ho Maofeng was infuriated. Fine. You're not only insulting me but insulting the name of my Hui Chui workshop as well. Mr. Shui, please leave. Even if all of you got on your knees and begged me, I would never sell this batch of goods to the Sea family. Don't force me to call security to chase you out. Huang Shi Xian was initially just trying his luck and didn't think he was so lucky. This time, the Sea family let go of this business, sent such a dumb flower vase over to discuss business and she even offended Ho Maofeng. Huang Shi Xian immediately stepped forward and soothed him, Boss Ho, don't be mad, don't be mad. These unknowledgeable people have no idea how to judge the quality of your goods, you shouldn't be bothered by them. We're all business people here. It's her loss that she doesn't know what's good, it has nothing to do with us. Boss Ho, are you still fretting over who to sell this batch of goods to? Huang Shi Xian's hint was very obvious. Although the Huang family's status wasn't higher than the Sea family's in Country Z, the price they offered was 10% higher than the Sea family and they were also one of the biggest jewelry businesses in Country Z's harbor city. Ho Maofeng pondered it for a second and seemed to have made a decision already. Hence, he turned to Shueli with a gloomy expression. Mr. Shui, are you sure you don't want this batch of goods? Shueli's eyes lit up. He knew this was their last chance. The group of experts was extremely anxious. After all, if they couldn't complete the task, they would also suffer a catastrophe. The 3 of them quickly surrounded Yuanwan and tried their best to convince her. Miss Yi, even though we don't dare to call ourselves the best in the industry, just ask around and there's nobody that doesn't know our names. The three of us have analyzed this batch of goods personally, we aren't wrong. Miss Yi, you merely read a couple books, yet you dared to determine whether the raw stone would rise or collapse? This is rather absurd, isn't it? Even if you have opinions about Director Qin, you shouldn't rely on Ninth Master's love for you and joke around with the company's affairs. Actually, if these people were willing to discuss with her nicely, she didn't mind explaining her plan to them. However, these people disregarded her from the beginning and only cared about Qin Ruoxi. She didn't have to give them face at all. Yi Wanwan smiled. Yes, I've recently started learning about this, but so what? In the precious stone trade, it's 30% judgment and 70% luck. I think I'm pretty lucky. Chapter 755. The short skit of the group of five. Ho Malfong scoffed and a hint of darkness appeared in his eyes. Seems like we don't have anything more to discuss. Ah, Kai, see them out. So what if she was sent by the Xi family? She was courting death and furthermore, she was just a lover of the Xi family master. He, Ho Malfong, wouldn't bother to give face to someone like her. Since she didn't want face, he couldn't be blamed for not giving it to her. The shop assistant immediately waved and a group of big and strong men aggressively walked over to Yi Wanwan. In the precious stones trade, over $10 to $100 million was always circulating on the street, so almost every shop had their own security, not to mention a shop of Hui Chui workshop size. Before 11 could do anything, Nameless Nya and his gang had already rushed over to Yi Wanwan and took confrontational stances with the big men who seemed very well trained. Nameless Nya raised his brows. Tisk, I'd like to see who dares to touch our boss. Devotee, how dare you? Our boss stays here as long as she likes. Spray of flowers, atrocious. Our boss is giving you face even if she decides to live here. Brick-moving foreigner, Little Flower and Devotee are right. Iceberg Man. Yi Wanwan, she seriously suspected these people hadn't watched bodyguard movies but rather, short skits since they were echoing each other like that. Ho Maofeng's face was filled with anger. TSK, nobody dares to cause a ruckus here at my Hui Chui workshop. I'd like to see what abilities you guys have. After receiving instructions from Ho Malfong, one of the bulky fighters immediately looked at the Iceberg Man, the weakest person among the group of five. Iceberg Man was too lazy to even speak, much less fight. At this moment, he stood there without moving at all, allowing the fighter to attack him. Yi Wanwan panicked when she saw this. After all, she only knew the Devotee and Spray of Flowers were skillful, she couldn't speak for the others' abilities. However, maybe this coffin-faced man might have some hidden talents. That thought had just crossed Yi Wanwan's mind when the Iceberg Man moved. The moment the fighter touched his body, a loud bang resounded as he fell backward. Following that, Spray of Flowers rushed over and pounced on the Iceberg Man. I-oh. Murder. Murder. The Devotee stared at those people, heartbroken. In broad daylight, bright as the sun and moon, this conniving hoodlum actually hurt someone like that. This will not be the end of it. Spray of Flowers, either go to jail. Or compensate us. Yi Wanwan's jaw dropped as she watched this exquisite performance of faking an accident to swindle compensation. Bullshit. I merely touched him. The fighter burst into anger. Anyway, he knew the other party was from the Xi family and he just wanted to scare them a little. How could he really hit him? Get lost. Bunch of scoundrels. Are you trying to extort money from us? The shop assistant rushed over in a huff and touched the Iceberg Man's neck. He was about to expose them, but his face changed drastically. Really, he's really not breathing, what did you say? Ho Maofeng's expression changed. Devotee, are you still not going to compensate us? Spray of Flowers, compensate us. With his looks and build, you must pay us 100 million at least. Nameless Nya glared at the both of them. Trying to rebel? The Devotee hurriedly said, no, We were just giving them a scare. We are decent bodyguards, we don't scam people. Spray of flowers, dead man, what are you waiting for? Get up. Iceberg man, the man on the floor laid still, obviously very satisfied with his current position. Spray of flowers, great, he's too comfortable and happy in that position again. Chapter 756, the person she had been waiting for has appeared. The shop assistant roared in fury, damn. All you scoundrels. Trying to pick a fight, huh? Huang Shi-Xian watched this drama unfolding before him and he laughed without restraint. Boss Ho, don't waste your time on these weird people. Why don't we talk about this batch of goods? Since the C family doesn't want it anymore, why don't you sell it to me instead? Of course, I know there's a snaking queue of people yearning for this batch of goods, but Boss Ho, you should know very well how sincere I am and I'll definitely offer a price that you'll be satisfied with. Seeing that the time was right, Huang Shi-Xian finally revealed his true intentions and instructed his companion with a meaningful glance. Behind him, a few men dressed in black came over. Click click click. They opened a couple of large suitcases. Inside, it was filled with American dollars. In the precious stones trade, payment was made on the spot. Both checks and transfers of funds were fine, but there were many businessmen who liked using cash directly. Huang Shi-Xian had even prepared the money, it was obvious he came prepared. The three experts from the C family were in despair at this moment. Deputy Director Shui, what should we do now? Should we make a phone call to the HQ? Shui Li's eyes lit up. No need. Remember, this is her being willful and it has nothing to do with us at all. The three of them looked at each other and seemed to understand what Shui Li was trying to say. With Shui Li's act of complicity, Huang Shi-Xian signed the bill eagerly. Right now, this batch of goods officially belonged to Huang Shi-Xian and there was no chance of rectifying this situation. Watching Huang Shi-Xian buying this batch of goods right before his eyes, 11 couldn't help but worry. Miss Wan Wan, now that Huang Shi-Xian has the raw stones, what about our mission? There's no rush. Yi Wan Wan was calm and collected like she was waiting for someone. Hey, why are all of you still here if you're not buying anything? The shop assistant from Hui Chui workshop couldn't tolerate this anymore. At first, Huang Shi-Xian thought he had no chance at all, but in the end, he managed to get what he wanted. He was elated and smiled at the shop assistant. Ha, you don't have to be mad. Let them stay as long as they want. They can see for themselves how I managed to get the top-grade jadeite in Boss Ho's store. Ho Mao Feng proudly said, Ah Kai, bring the best gem cutter over. The buyer could find a gem cutter themselves, but most of them let the store's gem cutter cut stones on the spot. Yes, boss. The shop assistant immediately went upstairs. Since there was quite a commotion at the shop, it attracted a crowd. 11 was worrying by the side while Huang Shi-Xian and Ho Mao Feng were engaged in a lively chat. Right then, a middle-aged man wearing a gray changshan, came walking into the store with a young assistant pushing a trailer of rocks. Boss Huang. I've brought the stuff you wanted. After entering, the man dressed in gray bowed slightly and spoke humbly. Before Huang Shi-Xian could speak, Ho Mao Feng raised his brows and said with a look of mockery, Oh, what do you treat me as, huh? Isn't this Boss Wan, the owner of Glittering Jewels Pavilion? What's the matter? You're selling stones at my Hui Chui workshop now, huh? When the man in gray heard Ho Mao Feng's mocking tone, his expression changed slightly but he kept it in and continued speaking to Huang Shi-Xian, Boss Huang, why don't you inspect the goods? Chapter 757, treated as charity. Huang Shi-Xian gazed indifferently at the pile of rocks and said in an annoyed manner, I've already bought Boss Ho's goods, I don't need yours anymore. Bring your goods back, don't get in the way of opening my stones. Huang Shi-Xian immediately turned to Ho Mao Feng to explain, Boss Ho, don't be offended by this. Before, you wanted to sell your goods to the C family, right? I really couldn't get my hands on any goods and coincidentally, Wan Hiyun's store was in a rush to push their goods out, so their prices were really low. Therefore, I accepted their offer. The moment Won Hee-yun heard that he knew exactly what was going on, Hwang Shur-xin had already discussed the prices with him and even got him to deliver the goods over. But now, he wanted to back out on the deal because he bought Ho Mao-feng's goods. Ho Mao-feng shook his head and said to Hwang Shur-xin, "Boss Hwang, no offense, but how could you accept such rubbish goods?" Hwang Shur-xin sighed. His prices were low and we had friendly relations with one another before. He kept begging me to buy from him, so I pitied him and just treated it as charity. Ho Mao-feng chuckled. "Boss Hwang, you can't put it that way. Everyone knows Glittering Jewels Pavilion hasn't produced a single decent jade for almost 3 years. It's not like you had no idea how unlucky their goods are, yet you still had the guts to accept them. Aren't you afraid of losing a fortune and even being infected by their bad luck, huh?" Currently, a few businessmen and tourists started whispering among themselves when they heard what Ho Mao-feng said. "Who is this man? Boss Ho said the goods in his store are unlucky. What did he mean by that?" "You don't know him. He's the owner of Glittering Jewels Pavilion, Won Hee-yun." Previously, Glittering Jewels Pavilion was considered quite popular in H City. It was comparable to Hui Chui Workshop, but too bad, Won Hee-yun was unlucky. The stones in his store haven't produced a decent piece of jade in almost 3 years and nobody dares to go to his store for raw stones now. Exactly. Everybody knows Glittering Jewels Pavilion hasn't produced any quality jade for 3 years. They're very unlucky, and whoever bets on them will lose. Boss Hwang really was doing charity. If a precious stones trade store didn't produce any decent jade for a long time, obviously nobody would want to visit it. On the contrary, if a store incidentally produced a top-quality jade, it might have a sudden boom in business with an endless stream of customers. After all, everyone wanted to have good luck and make profits. A store like Glittering Jewels Pavilion that hadn't produced any good jade would have no customers even if the quality of materials was the same as other stores because people would want to avoid getting bad luck. This chapter is scrapped from Read Light Novel. Org. Listening up to this point, Yi Wan paused and her eyes twinkled slightly. Glittering Jewels Pavilion. Won Hee-yun. Won Hee-yun's face turned pale as he listened to these nasty comments. Hwang Shur-xin sounded like he was doing charity, but in actual fact, Won Hee-yun sold this batch of goods to him at a loss. He only charged him 70% of the price. Hwang Shur-xin had gotten the goods at a bargain. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wanted them at all. As for Ho Mao-feng, these two stores had always been rivals. Many years ago, Ho Mao-feng was selling counterfeit goods and was exposed by him on the spot. Since then, it had caused a hatred and desire for revenge. All these years, Ho Mao-feng had been trying to obstruct his business. Along with the fact that he was pretty unlucky and didn't have a single decent jade produced from his store, his business started to dwindle. Today, Glittering Jewels Pavilion was an arrow at the end of its flight and it was hard for them to hold it together. Ho Mao-feng sneered, "Won Hee-yun, you actually disregarded your conscience and sold these lousy stones to Boss Hwang. Don't you have any professional ethics at all?" Hwang Shur-xin knew Ho Mao-feng wasn't on good terms with Won Hee-yun. Since he had just signed a big deal with Ho Mao-feng, he didn't mind doing him a favor. Chapter 758, This is awkward. Hence, Hwang Shur-xin directly went back on his words and said, "Boss Wan, I think you better go elsewhere to ask if anybody wants your goods. We don't accept these defective goods in the precious stones trade." Won Hee-yun panicked. "What, Boss Hwang, we already had an agreement, and I was willing to sell them to you at a 30% discount," Ho Mao-feng scoffed. "Tisk, Won Hee-yun, with goods of this quality, I'm afraid nobody will want them even if you gifted these to them. Why would they want your bad luck?" Won Hee-yun, who had been speaking softly, trembled in anger. "Ho Mao-feng. What do you want?" Ho Mao-feng didn't care that so many people were around. He spoke loftily, "Won Hee-yun, I already told you before that as long as I, Ho Mao-feng, am around, your Glittering Jewels Pavilion can forget about selling a single stone." Won Hee-yun clenched his fists tightly. "Ho Mao-feng, don't go too far. Ho Mao Feng burst out in laughter. Oh, I just want to bully you. What can you do to me? If you're willing to sell your goods to me at a discount of 70%, I can consider doing this charity and accept your rubbish goods. Otherwise, I would like to see who dares to take your stones in all of H City. 70%? I might as well just give them to you for free. You're basically trying to profit from my misfortune. The assistant from Glittering Jewels Pavilion was so furious that both his eyes were red. Boss Ho, don't cross the line. Previously, Wan Hiyun took a deep breath and interrupted his assistant. That's enough. Let's go. If they continued, they would simply embarrass themselves further. The little assistant was filled with grief and indignation. What do we do with this batch of goods? If we can't sell them, our store will really have to close down. 11 looked at the situation and shook his head. This Ho Mao Feng often holds grudges. Wan Hiyun is really unlucky. At this moment, Yi Wan, who was sitting there calmly sipping on her tea the whole time, stood up quietly. Miss Wan, 11 didn't know what Yi Wan wanted to do and he looked at her, confused. Yi Wan stood up directly and called out to Wan Hiyun, who was about to leave with his assistant. Hey, that gentleman over there, please wait. Wan Hiyun turned around, dispirited. Miss, is anything the matter? Yi Wan looked at the middle-aged man who was down and out. Glittering Jewel Pavilion, Wan Hiyun, Boss Wan. Wan Hiyun, that's me. What instructions do you have for me, miss? Yi Wan grinned. I wouldn't dare to instruct you, but I want to discuss a business deal with you. Wan Hiyun was taken aback and it seemed like he hadn't returned to his senses. Discuss, a business deal? Miss, you want to buy my raw stones? Yi Wan, that's right. Wan Hiyun was flabbergasted. Could it be a tourist who refuses to be misled by fallacies? All these years, the stones he sold were mostly bought by tourists who were curious. Wan Hiyun subconsciously thought it was the same for Yi Wan as well. Now that the store's funds couldn't make ends meet, selling one piece of stone was better than nothing. Miss, which stone would you like? You can choose whichever you want, Wan Hiyun said and instructed his assistant to stop pushing the trailer. Even if he was merely selling a piece of stone, he was still very serious and earnest. Yi Wan leaned over and examined each stone carefully. After taking a look at all of them, Yi Wan found out miserably that she couldn't pick one. She remembered that in her previous life, Ho Mao Feng bought Glittering Jewels Pavilion's raw stone at an extremely low price. In the end, that batch of stones produced a top-grade emerald green imperial jade. It shocked the entire precious stones industry. Chapter 759, Backing of the Great Devil. Finally, Wan Hiyun couldn't handle the psychological blow and ended up committing suicide. There were many cases of people committing suicide in Myanmar due to losing their fortune in gambling, so it didn't attract any attention. Only news of that raw stone which contained the emerald green imperial jade spread to the entire jade trade, but all the money and fame ended up with Ho Mao Feng. Currently, Yi Wan knew a piece of stone contained the emerald green imperial jade in this pile of stones, but the problem was that she didn't know which was the exact raw stone. This is embarrassing. Yi Wan made some calculations with her pathetic mathematics skills. Since she didn't know which raw stone it was, she might as well just buy them all. Anyway, she definitely wouldn't take any losses. With that thought, Yi Wan glanced at the pile of rocks on the trailer and said, I would like to purchase all the raw stones on the trailer. Wan Hiyun was stunned. What? Miss, you want to buy all of my raw stones? All? Yi Wan, that's right. Hearing this conversation, not only was Wan Hiyun shocked, but everyone who was gathered around thought she was insane. Someone actually wants to buy Glittering Jewels Pavilion stones? She even wants to buy them all. This beauty has some guts, huh? I think she's nuts. Finally, I understand what this idiom means, wearing a $10 hat on a 5-cent head. The experts from the C family were in disbelief and all of them exploded instantly. This glittering jewels pavilion is close to shutting down already and they haven't had a decent piece of jade in 3 years. The other two experts looked at Yi Wanwan like she couldn't be saved anymore. Is this woman crazy? She rejected Hui Chui Workshop's top-quality raw stones and went to buy a pile of junk instead? Deputy Director Shui, what should we do now? Please say something. Shui Li was crossed. This is absurd. Ho Mao Feng looked at Shui Li in a mocking manner. They actually allowed a person like that to interfere with the company's affairs. I think the C family today, TSK. Shui Li's face became unbearably hot when he heard Ho Mao Feng's ridicule. Yi Wanwan wasn't only messing around here, she was embarrassing the entire C family. Yi Wanwan ignored the uproar around her. She picked a stone up, touched it and probed, Boss Wan, are you willing to sell them? Wan Hiyun looked like he was in a difficult position. He glanced at Ho Mao Feng fearfully and finally replied, Miss, thank you for your kind intentions, but never mind, I don't want to give you any trouble. Ho Mao Feng had already said he wouldn't allow anybody to buy his stones. He didn't want to involve others in this conflict. Everyone in the jade trade had to give some face to Ho Mao Feng. There was nothing to gain at all if one offended him. Yi Wanwan glanced at Ho Mao Feng and laughed. Ha, just because others don't dare to buy them doesn't mean I feel the same way. Boss Wan, don't worry, I have quite a strong backing. After all, she had the backing of the Great Devil, she didn't have anything to fear. Yi Wanwan then realized that the Great Devil's reputation could be quite useful at times. Ho Mao Feng's face turned slightly ugly, but he didn't protest at all. Even if Yi Wanwan was only a lover, she represented the C family and if she really wanted to intervene, there was nothing he could do. Darn it, he was planning to push Wan Hiyun to the end of his rope and swallow this batch of goods at a low price. He didn't expect this woman would ruin his plan. TSK, never mind, he didn't really care for goods of this lousy quality anyway, he just wanted to insult Wan Hiyun. Chapter 760, quite pleasing to the eye. Wan Hiyun asked hesitantly, Miss, you are? Yi Wanwan, Country Z, C family. C family. Wan Hiyun was overwhelmed, everybody knew about the C family from Country Z. They had tremendous influence, especially in Myanmar. Wan Hiyun asked hesitantly again, Miss, are you sure you want to buy this batch of stones from me? Yi Wanwan grinned. I find this batch of raw stones quite pleasing to the eye, so, Boss Wan, give me a price. These are considered pleasing to the eye. Upon hearing what Yi Wanwan just said, everyone present stood rooted to the ground, stunned. This woman wants to buy the raw stones from Glittering Jewels Pavilion just because they're pleasing to the eye. Wan Hiyun hesitated for a long time and thought about the current state of his store. Finally, he said, Miss, this is all the stock I have in my store and since you like them, I can sell them to you at a loss. I'll let them go at half price for you. At first, he already made plans for the worst. The worst thing would be not being able to sell even a single stone, resulting in his stones all ending up in his hands. But now, there was someone who wanted to buy them and to him, this was already the best outcome he could hope for. Yi Wanwan laughed. I don't ever allow people to give me a discount for things I find pleasing to the eye. Just give me the original price. That was what Yi Wanwan said, but in her heart, she knew very well that in this batch of raw stones, there would be a big surprise. If she really bought them at half price, she wouldn't be able to live with herself. Furthermore, Wan Hiyun was already on the verge of going bankrupt and in her previous life, his ending was so tragic. In this life, since she knew she would profit from this, why couldn't she give Wan Hiyun a way out? Wan Hiyun was taken aback by Yi Wanwan's word and was very moved, he hadn't expected Yi Wanwan would say something like that. Everyone around them was in disbelief and they gossiped among themselves. Was this woman really sent by the C family? She rejected Fei Chui Workshop's goods and went to buy Glittering Jewels Pavilion's rubbish instead. When the owner wanted to sell the goods to her at a discount, she insisted on the original price. She looks quite pretty. Too bad there's something wrong with her head. What does the C family do for a living, eh? Upon hearing the nasty comments around him, Xue Li's face turned extremely ugly. It was all because of this woman. He had never been this embarrassed before. Miss Yi. Please think carefully before you act. Xue Li furrowed his brows. Think before I act? Yi Wanwan gave Xue Li side-eye. You're preaching to me now. Miss Yi. That isn't what I meant. I'm just doing my duty to the best of my abilities. Xue Li explained. So loyal, huh? Yi Wanwan scoffed. Who are you loyal to? Don't forget your status and who you're speaking to. Xue Li nodded and turned to Yi Wanwan. Fine. If Miss Yi insists on doing this, I can only report it to the HQ. Yi Wanwan, be my guest. Xue Li was furious. He took out his phone and made a call. In Country Z, in a conference room, a group of higher-ups and elders was having a meeting. As one of the members of the C family's board of directors, Feng Yiping suddenly stood up and left the meeting to answer a call. After some time, Feng Yiping returned from his phone call and seemed distressed. Everyone, sorry to interrupt, but something happened in Myanmar. What is it? Si Mingli looked at Feng Yiping and asked. Feng Yiping told the entire story immediately. After hearing the situation, the entire room was in an uproar. This is ridiculous. Chairman Si was already giving her special treatment by giving her the title of personal assistant. Now, she actually acted so recklessly on her first mission. What does she think this company is, huh? Chapter 761, Why don't we make a bet? Chairman Si was too careless. How could someone like her be the future mistress of the household? Ha! Si Mingli sneered. So what? As long as our master Si is happy, it's fine. The white-haired elder, Si Mingrong, snarled, Mingli, what nonsense are you speaking? Si Mingli looked at the white-haired elder. Second brother, what can I say, huh? I merely made a few comments about that woman before and master broke both of my son's legs. So what do you want me to say right now? If I said anything awful about her, I'm afraid my life would be over, Si Mingrong looked at Feng Yiping. Tell Xue Li to pass the phone to the woman. Feng Yiping nodded and replied after some time. That woman refused. Upon hearing that, the entire conference room was in chaos. She's so daring, huh? If she doesn't want to answer the call, just get Xue Li to make it a video call, Si Mingli said. At Fei Chui workshop, Yi Wanwan was seated at the side and Xue Li stood in front of her with the phone pointed towards her. Yi Wanwan. A loud voice bellowed from the phone receiver. Upon hearing this, Yi Wanwan looked at the screen and saw the top management of the Si family. At the moment, Xue Li and Ho Mao Feng were gloating and yearning for a good show. Who does she think she is? She infuriated the top management of the Si family. Let's see how she's going to clean up this mess. Why aren't you guys focused on your meeting? All of you have nothing better to do and insist on having a video call with me, huh? Yi Wanwan looked at the higher-ups in the video call and laughed sarcastically. Yi Wanwan, you're gutsy. Miss Qin Rua, she already made an agreement with Hui Chui workshop beforehand, yet an outsider like you, who doesn't know a single thing, ruined it. You're hurting the company's reputation. Feng Yiping raged and shouted at her. As a member of the board of directors, he had the power to advise against her even if she was the mistress of the household. Anyway, Yi Wanwan wasn't even the mistress of the household yet. Since Ajo believes in me and entrusted me with this task, I'll definitely do my best. Since all of you aren't happy, just go look for your master outright. Why are you guys talking to me? Yi Wanwan said calmly. You, what did you say? Feng Yiping gritted his teeth. Ha, I already said that since Ajo wants to play, let him be. Anyway, he doesn't care about this bit of money at all. Just treat it as giving to a beggar, Si Mingli sneered in the video call. Yi Wanwan immediately looked at Si Mingli and said in a surprised tone, Fourth great uncle, why are you here too? I thought you would be at home taking care of your crippled son, eh? Following that, Si Mingli stood up instantly. Yi Wanwan, you really think you're so smart, huh? What you're doing now will harm the interests of everyone in the Si family. Are you able to take responsibility for the consequences? Yi Wanwan, if you refuse to listen to orders, you'll have to take responsibility for all the consequences. When you return from Myanmar, even Ajio might not be able to protect you this time. Si Mingrong spoke in his capacity of the Si family's head of the prosecution hall. I have no problem with that at all. Since all of you think I'll lose in the gamble, why don't we make a bet? What would you like to bet with? Feng Yiping knitted his brows. If I make a profit this time, the participants will have to call themselves a cuckold and bastard. Who's in? Yi Wanwan said after she considered for some time. Nonsense. Feng Yiping yelled. You don't dare, huh? Yi Wanwan raised her brows. Chapter 762 Feng Yiping, you. However, Si Mingli looked straight at Yi Wanwan and said, Fine, I'll bet with you, but if you lose, you must leave the company. Sure. If I win, you have to act according to what I said, and if I lose, I'll leave the company and never interfere with the company's affairs ever again. Yi Wanwan slapped the table and finalized the bet. All right then, I'll bet with you too. Feng Yiping said. This woman doesn't know a thing about gambling in stones and actually dared to spout nonsense here. She's humiliating herself. Even that top-notch expert in the jade trade didn't dare to slap his chest and brag he would definitely make profits, much less a rookie. After all, trading in jade required 30% skill and 70% luck. At this moment, Ho Mao Feng and Shueli looked astonished. They didn't expect that even the elders and board of directors in the Si family wouldn't be able to control this woman. However, Ho Mao Feng watched as if it was all a joke. Anyway, it was the Si family humiliating themselves. It didn't have anything to do with him at all. Shueli, don't turn off the video call. I'd like to see how this Miss Yi is going to win. In the video call, a certain higher-up from the Si family sneered. All right. Shueli nodded and agreed. Currently, there were more and more people gathered around. Hui Chui workshop was completely surrounded. Spray of Flowers, the devotee, and the others stood excessively close to Yi Wanwan as if she was at risk of being killed. Boss Wan, I want this batch of raw stones. Is it convenient for us to trade right now? Yi Wanwan turned to Wan Hiyun. This. Miss Yi, don't you need to consider it further? Wan Hiyun sighed. Wan Hiyun said that although he really wanted to earn this money, if he could sell them at their original price, he would be able to clear his high-interest loans and even have some extra money for his operating fund. With this, his jade store would be able to operate steadily for at least 2 years or so. But Wan Hiyun could see Yi Wanwan's situation very clearly. Even he didn't have high expectations for this batch of raw stones, not to mention the top management and elders of the Si family. In all honesty, just from the looks and quality of the stones, they were much lower in quality compared to Hui Chui workshop. I don't need to consider anymore. Is it possible to finalize the deal right now? Yi Wanwan asked. Sure. Wan Hiyun nodded. Since Yi Wanwan got the green light, she didn't want to waste any more time and immediately settled the deal with Wan Hiyun. After about a minute, the transaction of this batch of raw stones was over. As for Huang Shi Xian, he already proceeded with the purchase of raw stones from Hui Chui workshop. The raw stones Qin Ruo she reserved beforehand were all bought by Huang Shi Xian. Ho Mao Feng turned to Yi Wanwan and sneered, Miss Yi, you're actually so confident, huh? Why don't you cut the stone up in my store? I can offer you the gem cutter from my store. I would really like to see what amazing stuff you'll get from this batch of raw stones you bought from Wan Hiyun. Of course that's fine, but forget about the gem cutter from your Hui Chui workshop. If he cuts into my high-quality material, I'm afraid you won't be able to compensate me. Yi Wanwan laughed. Ha, you think you'll get a high-quality material from this rubbish? Miss Yi, I think you didn't have a good sleep last night and you're now daydreaming. Ho Mao Feng's eyes were filled with disdain. Yi Wanwan couldn't be bothered with Ho Mao Feng and simply turned to Wan Hiyun. Boss Wan, please ask your store's gem cutter to come over. Chapter 763. Upon hearing that, Wan Hiyun nodded and said, Miss Yi, don't worry about that. I'll definitely get the best gem cutter from my store over for you. With that, Wan Hiyun left Hui Chui workshop. At this moment, the crowd was discussing amongst themselves. This woman from the Xi family might have suffered a blow to her head. Even though this batch of goods from Hui Chui workshop was expensive, they mostly had an open window. This so-called open window meant that a small portion of the raw stone was polished off, and through that window, customers could determine the color and some details about what was inside the stone. The batch of goods from Wan Hiyun was mostly a gamble. The raw stones hadn't gone through any treatment and nobody knew what they contained. One of them was a gamble with the highest risk while the other had an open window with a much lower risk. Nobody knew where this woman got her confidence from, to the point where she was so certain her raw stones would definitely beat Hui Chui workshop's raw stones that had an open window. While Yi Wanwan waited, Huang Shi Xian started to cut the rock open. Boss Huang, it's opened. It was only the first raw stone and the gem cutter delivered good news. Boss Huang. Congratulations, congratulations. Fully green icy jade. It's a great type with a good degree of transparency. It's not too small either. You'll be able to make at least 10 bracelets and use the leftovers to make a couple of decorations. You've made a profit. The gem cutter had already cut the first raw stone open and managed to obtain pretty decent jade from it. Upon seeing this, Huang Shi Xian was in a very good mood. Even Ho Mao Feng was filled with glee, and the customers gathered around exclaiming in admiration as well. Hui Chui Workshop is truly Hui Chui Workshop. They're truly the store with the highest probability of getting a green jade in H City. Exactly, Hui Chui Workshop is our H City's pride and glory. TSK, this amount of money turned over 10 times in just the blink of an eye. No wonder people said that gambling in stones makes you either a cut poorer or a cut richer. I'd like to see what sort of material the Xi family will be able to get from their stones. After seeing Hui Chui Workshop getting a decent jade, the crowd started to get excited and discussed amongst themselves. At this moment, Wan Hiyun hurriedly brought the best gem cutter from his store over to Hui Chui Workshop. The two of them rushed over and immediately watched the great revealing of the raw stone Huang Shi Xian bought. A hint of sadness flashed across Wan Hiyun's eyes and he looked at Yi Wanwan with worry. The gem cutter who came with Wan Hiyun was about 60 years old. Since the store hadn't been doing very well, he hadn't cut any raw stones for a very long time. When he heard his boss had made a transaction, he was way more excited than anyone else. Every gemcutter's dream was to cut open a raw stone that contained good jade. Hello, Miss Yi, I'm the gem cutter, Wang Hu. The elderly man looked at Yi Wanwan and smiled politely. Hello, Master Wang, sorry to trouble you this time. Yi Wanwan nodded. How about it, Miss Yi? Can we start now? Everybody can't wait to see what amazing material you're going to get from this batch of top-quality stones, eh? Ho Mao Feng ridiculed her. Of course. The gem cutter is already here, Yi Wanwan said plainly. Miss Yi, shall we start right now? The gem cutter from Glittering Jewels asked Yi Wanwan for instructions. Sure, go ahead, Yi Wanwan replied. Following what Yi Wanwan said, the gem cutter started his job. Shweli, the group of experts, Ho Mao Feng, Huang Shi Xian and everyone else had their eyes glued to the raw stone in Wang Hu's hands. Chapter 764. Probably because he wanted to have a good start, the piece of rock in Wang Hu's hands seemed the best among the batch. Green ring with a black python belt, this appearance meant there was a high chance of getting a green jade inside. Under everyone's eager gazes, Wang Hu carefully polished off a small window at the top. It was green. Everyone's eyes lit up, seeing that green color and transparency, it seemed quite promising. Won Hee-yun's heart was in his throat. He hurriedly reminded the gem cutter, "Be careful. Cut from an angle at this position." Wang Hu nodded and continued cutting. In the end, Won Hee-yun's face turned pale in the next second. The moment the knife went through, it was completely empty and everything was white with just that thin and small piece of green jade at the top. "Ha ha ha, there's nothing inside at all, it's truly a raw stone from Glittering Jewels Pavilion. You really have to believe in the heresy even if you don't want to, huh? I wonder why she acted so rashly and rejected Hui Chui Workshop stones and insisted on buying Won Hee-yun's unlucky raw stones." Everyone couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh. Having his store open for so many years, Won Hee-yun was already used to such situations. Especially in recent years, his store had very lousy luck. But at this moment, Won Hee-yun was extremely disappointed. "Miss Yi, I'm sorry." Just then, a shocking exclamation came from Huang Shi-xian's side again, "One more revealed. There's one more revealed." Shortly after, Hui Chui Workshop's gem cutter managed to get a good jade and it was a rare red jadeite. Seeing Hui Chui Workshop getting 2 pieces of high-quality jade, the crowd was in an uproar. The faces of those higher-ups and elders turned ashen as they watched the scene from Xue Li's video call. The cutting continued. One stone after another was cut open. The harvest from Hui Chui Workshop was bountiful and Huang Shi-xian got his assistant to give out red packets to the crowd. Meanwhile, over at Yi Wanwan's side, the gem cutter from Glittering Jewels Pavilion and Won Hee-yun looked quite upset. Up until then, they only managed to get half a piece of flawed yellow jade. The results from Ho Mao Feng's side were as expected and he sneered. "Ha, seems like you're not as lucky as you said you were, Miss Yi." At that moment, Ho Mao Feng and Yi Wanwan only had 1 or 2 stones left, the outcome would soon be revealed. After half an hour, the crowd was in an uproar. Huang Shi-xian was about to start cutting the last raw stone he had. It was the raw stone from Hui Ka that Yi Wanwan rejected before. That piece of stone had a small window already and there was a high chance it contained a top-quality jade. Yi Wanwan also had 2 stones left and if she still didn't get any decent jade, it would mean she lost all her money. At this moment, even the gem cutter on Yi Wanwan's side couldn't help but stop cutting and look over at Ho Mao Feng's side. The other raw stones from Ho Mao Feng's side simply served as a foil, the main highlight was actually this piece of Hui Ka stone. "Boss Huang, what do you think? Should we start cutting this final piece now?" Ho Mao Feng didn't even care about Yi Wanwan anymore. This piece of rock was more important. Huang Shi-xian rubbed his hands excitedly. Yes, 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 please go ahead." Chapter 765 Drastic Increase. "Be careful, polish it off slowly." Ho Mao Feng nagged the gem cutter. The process of opening up the stone was exceptionally crucial, it could cause a good quality stone to be destroyed. The gem cutter nodded. Even as an experienced cutter, he was still somewhat anxious. Of course, he was anxious because of his overexcitement. If he managed to get a top-quality jade, his reputation would soar. The crowd looked at that small window with a beautiful shade of green and they started commenting. "This has the quality of a glass-type jade. The color is beautiful too. That goes without saying. Jade has to be green and this is the shade of a green apple, the value of it is only second to an imperial jade. If the jade comes out to be a nicer shade of green or an emerald green, even a small piece would be, tisk tisk, a small piece? You're kidding. High-quality emerald green jade is valued based on their weight. When I went to Hong Kong for an auction before, I saw a small piece for a ring that was almost auctioned at 20 million Hong Kong dollars. H City hasn't had an emerald green jade for many years now. The quality of the jade was usually dependent on their type, color, and transparency. Type referred to the jade's texture and composition. The more exquisite a jade was, the more translucent it was. Some common terms used in the market were glass type, ice type, waxy type, bean type, and more. Glass type was the best. Apart from that, jade was also distinguished by the old type versus the new type. The value of the old type was higher than the new. As for transparency, even though it was usually said that if a jade was good quality, it'd be more transparent, sometimes the transparency would be affected by the interior of the jade, meaning whether it was clean or cloudy, etc. So the higher the transparency, the higher its value. For example, the glass type of jade had the highest transparency. There were various colors of jade, sometimes, just a small color difference could have a price difference of over tenfold. Green jade was further divided into different shades such as emerald green, apple green, greenish blue and more. Among them, emerald green, which was also known as imperial green, was worth the most. So it was no wonder that everyone got so excited just by looking at the color of the jade. Very soon, the gem cutter from Hui Chui workshop started to cut open the jade. The gem cutter followed the edge closely and cut the outer layer. Everyone watched eagerly and didn't even blink, afraid to miss a thing. Water! The gem cutter yelled. The assistant next to him quickly took some water to wash the surface, and the area that was cut was finally revealed to the crowd. After seeing the raw stone with a portion cut open, the crowd was somewhat disappointed. Indeed, it wasn't so easy to get an imperial jade. The gem cutter continued cutting the raw stone and carefully polished some areas of this giant rock. In the end, it made the crowd more and more excited. Although it wasn't an imperial jade, the few areas he polished were all green. What does it mean? It meant this giant rock might be completely filled with jade. Although it wasn't an imperial jade, it's pretty good already. After all, it's not so easy to get an imperial jade. Exactly. It's such a big rock. If it's filled with jade, how much would it be worth? Hui Chui workshop has proved itself once again, they're amazing. The eyes of the spectators were glistening. At this moment, Shueli looked at Yuan Wan and discreetly gritted his teeth. He was fuming inside. If it wasn't for this woman's interference, this rock, which has drastically risen in value, should be ours. Miss Yi, are you satisfied now? How could the stone that Director Qin researched and handpicked be wrong? The three experts from the Xi family shook their heads regretfully. What a pity. This material has probably risen in value tenfold, and judging by the current situation, with so many green areas, it's not impossible for the value to increase 100 times. Ha ha ha, Miss Yi, I have to thank you for this. Hearing the comments around him, Huang Shi Xian smiled widely at Yuan Wan. Yuan Wan smiled back. Be careful, there might be nothing inside when you cut it open, oh. Chapter 766. Obviously, Huang Shi Xian, Ho Mao Feng and everyone else didn't care about Yuan Wan's boast and thought she was just jealous. Continue. Just cut it open from here. Ho Mao Feng pointed and instructed the gem cutter confidently. All right, boss. The gem cutter nodded, rubbed his hands and started to work on this crucial cut. Everyone's eyes were on the gem cutter's hands, and the excitement Huang Shi Xian had was completely expressed on his face. The cutting machine started buzzing. The gem cutter cut this stone into two, then slowly washed the debris off with water. Finally, the interior of this high-quality stone was displayed fully in front of the crowd. In the hands of the gem cutter, a dark green material actually emerged. Ho Mao Feng used a flashlight to illuminate it. Under the glaring light, this dark green material was splendid and magnificent. Imperial jade? Seeing this, Huang Shi Xian got excited. Not only Huang Shi Xian, but the gem cutter from Glittering Jewels, Wang Hu, and Wan Hiyun were astonished as well. Imperial jade was one of the most expensive materials in Myanmar's jade trade, and when it was extracted, it was usually only about 10 kilograms. Get an expert to appraise it. Ho Mao Feng hurriedly shouted into the store. Upon hearing that, a couple staff members immediately left Hui Chui workshop. At this moment, the wrath Shueli and the group of experts felt towards Yuan Wan was boundless. This is an imperial jade, eh? And it's such a huge piece too. Ha ha ha, Miss Yi. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed once again. Huang Shixin chuckled. Ho Mao Feng grinned. I wonder what Miss Yi got from this batch of raw stones. Yi Wanwan didn't entertain Ho Mao Feng and the others. She turned and asked Wan Hiyun, Boss Wan, how many stones are we left with? Wan Hiyun replied with a ghastly expression, we're left with just one piece. They cut another piece just now and it was another empty one. With so many stones, even if they weren't as good quality as Hui Chui workshops, they had still been carefully selected by him, yet there wasn't a single decent one. Perhaps he really wasn't suitable for this profession. Ha ha ha. Ho Mao Feng burst out in laughter. Miss Yi, I think you're really going home with nothing. Open it up, don't you have one more? Why aren't you doing it? Are you scared? Miss Yi. Wan Hiyun didn't know what to say and felt very guilty. There's still one more, right? Just cut it. Yi Wanwan said very casually. Master Wang, please cut it. Wan Hiyun said weakly. All right. Wang Hu nodded and began working on it. This stone was really big, about 50 kilograms heavy. It was a classic black sand rock and it was also the most expensive rock among this pile of rocks. The machine began to slowly cut the stone that weighed almost 50 kilograms. Minutes and seconds passed, and the interior of the 50-kilogram stone was gradually revealed before everyone's eyes. The second the color of the raw stone was revealed, Wan Hiyun's heart sank all the way to the bottom. It's over, it's empty. Ha ha ha, this woman spoke so confidently before and I was almost convinced there was some exceptional stuff in there. In the end, it was a piece of yellow jade. Yellow jade was the lowest grade among all the other jades. So, this woman actually spent so much money, yet all she got was a rubbish piece of yellow jade? At this moment, the crowd laughed heartily at the jade that came out of that 50-kilogram rock. Chapter 767. It was the last piece of rock. Wang Hu's fingers were trembling. But in the end, it was still a loss. It was a yellow jade. It was an extremely ordinary yellow jade worth merely a few $100s. While Ho Mao Feng's rock actually had an imperial jade. Yi Wanwan, this is what you meant by winning and making profits? Just calculate how much losses you've incurred for the company. At the same time, on Xue Li's screen, Feng Yiping raged after seeing that yellow jade. Ha, this is hilarious, one of them is worthless junk, while the other is an imperial jade, this is interesting, Yi Wanwan. So when do you intend to fulfill your promise and get the hell out of the company? Si Mingli sneered. However, before Yi Wanwan could speak, a couple experts rushed over. One of the experts holding the flashlight looked carefully at the so-called imperial jade. After verifying it a couple times, he shook his head and said, this is not an imperial jade. Huang Shixin's face instantly fell. What nonsense are you spewing? If this isn't an imperial jade, what is it then? The expert was quite unhappy about Huang Shixin yelling at him and he replied firmly, this type of material does appear to be very translucent and seems to be a good quality ice or glass type jade. Especially the floating blue flower type, it really looks similar to the ice or glass type of green jade and is often used to pass off as an excellent quality jade. But there is a vast difference in price. At this moment, the experts from the C family that Yi Wanwan brought along took a closer look as well. Looking at it again, they realized it was true, this is truly not an imperial jade. They subconsciously believed this piece of stone from Hui Chui workshop was a high-quality jade and didn't doubt it at all or inspect it further. They didn't expect that it was just garbage. However, it was very hard to determine and even for an experienced person, it was very easy for them to identify the jade incorrectly, not to mention under all the present pressure and chaos. At this moment, Wang Hu, who had not given up and was still cutting the stone up, suddenly exclaimed excitedly, Miss Ye. Boss! There is a jump in color. This so-called jump in color meant that two or more different colors appeared in a piece of stone at the same time. One of Hou Maofeng's experts caught a glimpse of that green shade and rushed over excitedly. This is... Damn. In just a short while, the expert who identified Hou Maofeng's stone turned to the other experts and beckoned them over. Hurry! Hurry, look at this. Those experts quickly stepped forward and shone their flashlights on the rock. Under the intense light, this piece of material appeared to be a purer shade of green. Imperial jade. This is the true imperial jade. Following what the expert said, everyone present stood rooted to the ground. What? Hui Chui Workshop got a fake one while Glittering Jewels Pavilion actually got the real deal, the real imperial jade? How is this possible? This is the biggest imperial jade I've seen in my entire career. I can't even estimate how much it's worth. A certain expert looked at the huge rock weighing almost 50 kilograms and exclaimed in shock. Even though only a part of the middle portion was jade, it was still unexpected. Imperial jade, how could that be? This is impossible. How could you say that ours isn't imperial jade and theirs is? My store has been around for so many years, how could I incorrectly identify an imperial jade, huh? Hou Maofeng was fuming. Boss Ho, this really is imperial jade. If you don't believe me, take a look at it yourself. The expert was helpless and thought to himself. Even if you keep your store open for a couple more years, how many times will you get the chance to see imperial jade? Hou Maofeng hurriedly went forward to size it up. After the expert made repeated explanations, he had no choice but to believe it. Hou Maofeng glared angrily at Yuan Wan and was so furious that his blood flow was about to go in the other direction. If it wasn't for this woman, Wan Heyun's goods would have been his. Huang Shi Xian was going crazy. He kept interrogating the experts. Imperial jade, ha ha ha, the color actually jumped and it's an imperial jade. Wang Hu was so happy that he was dancing for joy. He actually cut open a stone containing an imperial jade in his lifetime. And this was top quality material, it was simply a miracle. Chapter 768. Wan Heyun was also extremely excited. Glittering Jewels Pavilion actually mined such a huge piece of imperial jade, so he wouldn't have to worry about not having any customers in the future anymore. The humiliation he endured for 3 years was finally over. His Glittering Jewels Pavilion could actually produce top-quality jade. Who's the owner of this imperial jade? A certain expert asked out of curiosity. The stone was cut open at Hui Chui Workshop, but judging by Hou Maofeng's reaction, it didn't look like it was from his store. The devotee immediately answered, mine. It's ours. Oh, wrong, it's our boss. Congratulations, Mississippi. I've benefited from your discovery and learned a lot today. The expert smiled and carefully placed his hand down. Miss, please be careful. After obtaining a treasure like this, she really had to be more careful, but with Nameless Nya and the other bodyguards, she shouldn't encounter any hiccups. Huang Shi Xian still didn't want to give up and made a few more cuts, but in the end, they still got nothing. So how much is my material worth exactly? Huang Shi Xian howled. The expert replied helplessly, about 100,000 or so. Yuan Wan sized up his piece of raw stone and sighed. I already said earlier that there's nothing in that stone. At that moment, Huang Shi Xian stared at the stone that was cut up into parts and was completely dumbfounded. I lost, the rock completely fell in value. So what if there was some decent jade in the previous few raw stones? Just this piece alone is enough to make me lose a fortune. Embarrassed, Shueli probed the 3 experts. Have all of you looked at it carefully? Is it really imperial jade? The 3 experts exchanged glances and summoned up their courage. Deputy Director Shui, it's absolutely true. We would never dare to be careless with such matters, and I've verified it many times just now, it's indeed imperial jade. It's been half a year since I've seen an imperial jade, and that was merely as big as a thumb. As the saying goes, it's challenging to judge an inch of jade even for deities. How exactly did Miss Yi manage to tell that the raw stone from Glittering Jewels Pavilion contained a high-quality jade? It's unbelievable. Those three experts were looking at Yi Wanwan almost like they were looking at a deity. At that instant, Yi Wanwan turned to the speechless Xue Li and sneered. Then she looked at Si Mingli and Feng Yiping in the video call. Currently, all the higher-ups from the Si family were so stunned that they couldn't say a word. She relied completely on a guess, managed to get a top-grade imperial jade, and it's such a huge piece. This is insane, huh? Gentlemen, isn't it time to honor our bet? Yi Wanwan laughed. Feng Yiping wanted to argue but realized he didn't have any idea of what to say. Not only were the top experts from Myanmar present, but there were also 3 experts from the Si family, so there couldn't be any doubts. This darn woman, she's too lucky. Everyone in the conference room was a higher-up and Feng Yiping had already made that bet. If he backed out, that would be equivalent to giving himself a slap. But who'd have thought this woman would actually win? Alas, Feng Yiping gritted his teeth. His face turned red and he unwillingly said, I am a bastard. Upon seeing that Feng Yiping said it, Si Ming Li's eyes turned gloomy. Fine, Yi Wanwan, you win this time. I am a bastard. Once he said that, the call ended straight away. Their actions were very swift. Chapter 769 Country Z, C Corporation. The meeting ended abruptly and the faces of the top management were indescribable. Initially, everyone was waiting to watch a good show, but in the end, nobody thought Feng Yiping and Si Mingli would be so embarrassed. Everybody was sighing incessantly in private. I really didn't expect that the outcome would be like this. If they had gone and bought the batch of goods Director Qin reserved, wouldn't they have lost a fortune? Exactly. Weird, didn't they say that the woman was an ignorant rich brat? How did she manage to pick such a great material with one glance? Not just that, you guys didn't see how she was so certain that the goods Director Qin reserved were worthless. This woman is really too devilish. At the same time, Jean Garden, it's done, Mr. C. Your current condition is pretty good, but you must remember not to slack off and maintain your condition. Upstairs, in the bedroom, Sun Bai Chao warned Si Yihan repeatedly after he was done with the acupuncture session. Sorry for the trouble, Dr. Sunday, Mr. C, you're too kind. If there's nothing else, I'll get going. After Sun Bai Chao left, Su Yi, who had been waiting anxiously, asked once again, Ninth Master, about matters on Miss Wanwan's side, are we really not going to do anything about it? Miss Wanwan took quite a big risk this time and there was news from the company that Miss Wanwan made a bet with Si Mingli and Feng Yiping in front of all the higher-ups in the meeting. She said if she lost the gamble with that rock, she would leave the company and never interfere with the company's affairs ever again. Speaking up to this point, Su Yi was panicking. Master finally managed to pave the path for Miss Wanwan, won't it all go to waste, then? After all, gambling with jade doesn't only depend on skill. Su Yi was extremely anxious but his master was so calm and composed that there wasn't the slightest frown on his face. Have you ordered the stuff I asked you to prepare? Si Yihan asked. Su Yi was stunned by that question and only reacted after a long time. He replied, I've already arranged for the almond cakes from Angelina to be air-flown from Country F Air. Is that really Master's main concern right now? Why does he care about cakes at this moment? Just then, there was a call from the company. After listening to the speaker, Su Yi was dumbfounded. After a very long time, he turned to his master in disbelief, 9th. Ninth Master. Wan. Miss Wanwan, she. What? Si Yihan lifted his eyes. Su Yi said excitedly, the results are out. That last rock actually had a huge piece of imperial jade. Ninth Master, you didn't see Feng Yiping and Si Ming Li's expressions, those two were left with no choice and had to honor their bets in front of everybody. At the time, Miss Wanwan was bent on having her way and insisted on buying that pile of rocks from Glittering Jewels Pavilion. Everyone thought she was being unreasonable. If not, Feng Yiping and Si Mingli wouldn't have made this sort of bet with her. But I didn't expect Miss Wanwan would win the gamble. Thinking back, he realized Miss Wanwan was really smart. She knew there was no way she could rattle their base stakes in the gamble with her current power and she would be overreaching herself, so she used this type of joking manner to dampen their drive. Chapter 770. By doing so, her prestige and opinions in the company would hold more weight and the two of them would no longer be absolutely unrestrained towards her in public unless they were really shameless. Sui thought about it while he looked at his master. Indeed, boss will always be boss. Miss Wanwan's way of handling things is always unreasonable in other people's eyes, but master never doubted her from the beginning. The phone started ringing. It was a call from Yi Wanwan. Si Han answered, "Hello. Quick, praise me, praise me. I want to hear 1,000 words. Not a word less, not a word less." The second the call went through, Yi Wanwan's voice rang through the receiver. Sui coughed lightly when he heard the girl's clear voice from the phone. 1,000 words. Even if you added up all the words Ninth Master says in a month, I'm afraid it wouldn't even hit 1,000 words, eh? Small ripples subtly emerged in Si Han's eyes as he said, "I've ordered the almond cake from Angelina for you. Awaiting your return." Yi Wanwan immediately howled, "OW. I love you, I love you. Baby, you're awesome." In the end, she was the one praising him instead. Actually, Yi Wanwan didn't like eating almonds in the past but lately, she suddenly started liking them and she simply mentioned it in passing to Si Han. She didn't expect he would remember. Yi Wanwan listened to what Si Han said and asked in a doubtful tone, Darling, can I ask you a question?" Si Han, what is it? You actually ordered the cake to celebrate in advance, were you so sure I could do it?" Yi Wanwan couldn't help but probe. Si Han looked out the window into the distance and didn't reply. Instead, he asked her, "So what if you couldn't?" Yi Wanwan blinked and blinked again then quickly translated it in her head, So, you mean, even if I didn't succeed, I would still have your help to clear up the mess, so I can do whatever nonsense I want, is that right?" Si Han, kinda. Yi Wanwan, kinda. Just say yes. Suyi's face was covered in tears as he listened to the conversation between the two of them. Damn. No wonder boss wasn't worried at all. This dog food came without warning and is brutally smeared all over my face. Once Yi Wanwan heard there would be food, she was completely placated and said ecstatically, "It's going very smoothly on my end, I'll be returning home as scheduled. Wait for my return and we'll eat it together." Actually she wants to eat something else more than the cake. Myanmar, H City, the group of 5 started, fawning, Yi Wanwan. Nameless Nya, famous Yi, this hand of yours is too lucky, huh? Devotee, I don't dare to call myself a fortune teller anymore. Spray of flowers, boss, you're simply a living deity. Brick-moving foreigner, boss, you're wise, amazing, unrivaled and incomparable, your magnificence is unmatched in this generation and you emerged victorious. The iceberg man lifted a sign and a number was written on it, 6. Yi Wanwan was speechless. The foreigner was pressured to learn so many Chinese idioms and even the coffin man with terminal lazy cancer wrote the number 6. Yi Wanwan laughed heartily and took out 5 red packets she had prepared for them. Things went very smoothly today and I managed to get a high-quality jade. These red packets are for all of you. Although these few drama kings were a little over the top, they were quite dedicated. Chapter 771. Their eyes lit up instantly as they took the red packet and counted it, 2,888. The hiring fee for each of them this time was 2,500, but in the end, this red packet contained even more than that. The 5 of them looked at each other and spoke one after another. Devotee, boss, are you in need of a private psychic? I can guarantee you'll have lucky divination results each time. Spray of flowers, boss, do you need an assistant? One that can chit-chat with you when you're bored or sing a little song. Brick moving foreigner, boss, need a brick mover? Iceberg man. Nameless nya, they can be packaged together and sold at a cheaper price. That dead man in the back is a free gift. Yuan Wan, that's enough. After listening to their nonsense for almost half a day, Yuan Wan finally moved on to business matters. We'll talk again after this mission. Nameless nya became serious in an instant. No problem, famous Yi. We'll make sure you're satisfied. What's next on our itinerary? Yuan Wan thought about it. There are some matters I need to follow up with tomorrow at the Gambling Stone Workshop. When I'm done, you guys will follow me somewhere to put on an act. I'll go through the details with all of you again when we're there. After going on this trip, her greatest fear was appearing weak and powerless. Previously, when she was traveling in Country B, she already thought about this issue, but with her abilities then, she couldn't have her own forces. It just so happened that there was a perfect opportunity in Myanmar this time. This was also one of the main reasons why she chose to take on this task. In her previous life, a group of powerful mercenaries was set up and completely wiped out others in Myanmar. If she could take this chance to recruit those people, it would be much more convenient for her to carry out tasks with her own force. The next day, after she settled the Gambling Stone matters, Yuan Wan took Nameless nya and the others out. Spray of Flowers looked at the iceberg man behind him and spoke in resentment, "Could you hurry up?" The iceberg man was carrying a coffin and was going at a much slower pace than everyone else. "Can't you just get him to throw that coffin away?" Yuan Wan pinched her brows and asked helplessly. Upon hearing that, the foreigner stepped forward, rubbed his chin and looked at Yuan Wan with widened eyes. Then he spoke in his awkward and out-of-practice Mandarin, "Boss Yi, he walks really slow, but it has nothing to do with the coffin. He's just too lazy to walk." The devotee smiled at Yuan Wan. "Yuan Wan, he's really a whole new kind of lazy." That being said, carrying a coffin from day to night was quite a feat for such a lazy person. Because of the iceberg man, Yuan Wan and the others walked for more than an hour before they finally arrived at their destination. There was a large plain up ahead and on the left, there was a relatively strange factory built out of nowhere. They were in the outskirts of H City, about 5 kilometers away from the city. It wasn't developed fully and was quite inaccessible, so there wasn't anybody there. Occasionally, a couple of wild animals would pass by. To avoid alerting their enemies, Yuan Wan traveled by foot with Nameless nya, Spray of Flowers and the others and didn't use any transportation. Thankfully, this path is a straight line and easy to navigate, otherwise, I really don't think I would have been able to recall it. Yuan Wan thought to herself when she saw the factory up ahead. In her previous life, when they arrived in Myanmar H City, they passed this place before. Afterward, they found out that a gang of roving bandits had snuck into the factory and had a shooting with the triad members. In the end, all of them were wiped out. Chapter 772. After that, they found out that those people weren't roving bandits but members of a mercenary army. It was said that at the time, this mercenary army accepted a mission from a certain gang from H City to retrieve something important. Alas, when they got the item and handed it over to the gang, this particular gang actually publicly claimed they didn't receive anything. As there were many organizations and mercenary armies looking for that item, the gang actually ratted those mercenaries out in order to protect themselves from getting into trouble after receiving the item. Everyone thought the item was taken by that group of mercenaries and was hunting them all down. These mercenaries were so miserable thanks to those gangsters, so obviously, they weren't willing to take things lying down. They ran straight to H City and confronted that gang. Unfortunately, these people ended up in the gang's trap and were wiped out by them. Only 1 or 2 of them escaped. In her previous life, she overheard the Dark Team guards talking about it. That was how she got to know of this incident. The strange factory was built by foreign gangs to produce all sorts of illegal drugs and distribute it to various countries, including Country Z. The factory was just a very small workshop, they could abandon it at any time. Myanmar H City was already considered a chaotic zone and there were very few people who would go there, especially for this undeveloped area. So even if they were discovered, they wouldn't be heartbroken about abandoning this little workshop. Boss Yi, what are we doing here? Spray of Flowers looked around and was confused. Yi Wanwan only mentioned to them before that she would be taking them out for a task, but she didn't tell them the purpose mainly because she was worried they wouldn't want to proceed. Therefore, Yi Wanwan decided to tell them only when they arrived at their destination. Look at that small factory. Yi Wanwan pointed. I see it, isn't it just a little workshop? What's up? The devotee couldn't see what was so special about it. Don't you find it odd that there's a small workshop here? Yi Wanwan probed. Odd? The devotee shook his head, what's so odd about it? Isn't it just a building for some foreign or local gangs to break the law? Let's not talk about that first. This time, we're here to put on an act. Yi Wanwan looked mysteriously at Nameless Nya and the others. Act? This is good, it's better than being a bodyguard. Spray of Flowers nodded continuously. I think being a bodyguard is better. The devotee disagreed. Iceberg Man, ? Nameless Nya was annoyed. Shut your trap. Following Nameless Nya's outburst, Spray of Flowers and the devotee immediately shut their mouths. As for the Iceberg Man, this request was probably the best thing he heard. Famous Yi, why aren't there any cameras around if we're acting? Nameless Nya waited for the devotee and Spray of Flowers to be completely silent before he looked around. There's no production team either, cameras, lights, and most importantly, where's the stage team that takes care of our lunches? Who said those kinds of things were necessary for acting? Yi Wanwan rolled her eyes at Nameless Nya. This guy is actually only concerned about the food, We don't need them. Nameless Nya furrowed his brows. Do we? Yi Wanwan asked him in return. You're the boss, you call the shots. If you say we do, then we do. If you say we don't, then we don't. But Famous Yi, you have to increase our pay for changing our roles all of a sudden, Nameless Nya looked at Yi Wanwan and chuckled lightly. Chapter 773, Right, Captain's right. We agreed to be your bodyguards before and now you want us to act, you have to increase our pay. Spray of Flowers hurriedly chimed in and nodded. Boss Yi, you've got to increase our pay by at least $200 each, the devotee said. Bullshit, $200. Nameless Nya glanced at the devotee then looked at Yi Wanwan. I think you should increase our pay by at least $500 each. I'll increase each of your pay by 1,000. Yi Wanwan laughed. Upon hearing what Yi Wanwan said, Nameless Nya stepped forward and held Yi Wanwan's arm. Famous Yi, you said it yourself, You'll increase each of our pay by 1,000 and there are 5 of us here, so that makes $5,000. You can't go back on your word, alright. Spray of Flowers, Boss Yi is so generous. Devotee, Boss Yi has good taste. Brick Moving Foreigner, good taste. Iceberg Man, ? Yi Wanwan immediately pulled her hand back, speechless. However, I have to make it clear that you guys must act well and can't be reckless or unruly. Famous Yi, you can put your heart in your stomach, I'll let you see what it means to be a true acting king, Nameless Nya said proudly. It's just acting. As the saying goes, life is like a movie, it all depends on how you act. Everyone is a great actor. Yi Wanwan, she was just worried they would be too into their characters and overdo it, okay? Come over, listen to Boss Yi. Act more serious. Nameless Nya waved at Spray of Flowers and the others. The 4 of them immediately gathered around Yi Wanwan. Have you guys heard of the Rose of Death? Yi Wanwan looked at all of them mysteriously. This group of 5 was quite skilled and should certainly have quite a bit of experience, so Yi Wanwan believed these people should have heard of the Rose of Death. At the mention of the Rose of Death, the devotee and brick-moving foreigner roared with laughter instantly, leaving Yi Wanwan puzzled. Rose of Death, Boss Yi, even you've heard of the Rose of Death, huh? Very soon, the devotee stopped laughing. What is it? The Rose of Death is so famous, it's not strange that I've heard about them, right? Yi Wanwan asked. Ha, Captain, should we tell famous Yi the truth? The devotee looked at nameless Nye. After getting nameless Nye's approval, the devotee laughed. Boss Yi, I'll just tell you the truth, there is no Rose of Death on this earth. There's no Rose of Death? Yi Wanwan was taken aback by what the devotee said. There's no Rose of Death. Are they insane or am I the crazy one? Then Yi Wanwan revealed a hint of contempt towards the devotee. Just admit it if you don't know who they are. Boss Yi, I'm speaking the truth. In this world, there's no such thing as the Rose of Death, they were simply made up. The devotee explained in a serious tone. Made up? As if Yi Wanwan would believe that. How could this amount of power be fabricated? Previously, when they were overseas, she managed to save the Sea family by disguising herself as the Rose of Death. If it was made up, then even the Sea family had no idea. Everyone else in the outside world had no clue about the truth either. Why would we lie to you? The Rose of Death really doesn't exist. Its origins merely came from a couple of manuscripts, that's all, Spray of Flowers said firmly. Manuscripts? Yi Wanwan became more suspicious. What are they saying? Chapter 774 Actually, The Rose of Death was just a book our captain's father wrote when he was younger. He roughly described a power like that and stopped writing after that. Then the captain was born and he thought the Rose of Death was pretty interesting, so he continued writing and described the Rose of Death in more detail when he was younger. Such as how the members of the Rose of Death wore windbreakers with a subtle rose print on them and silver masks. All these details were written when the captain was a few years old. The leader of the Rose of Death, Black Widow, who loved men and was bloodthirsty, was also made up by the captain. The devotee laughed. After that, the Nya family had a break-in and they lost the manuscript. It was at that point that the story of the Rose of Death spread, from 10 people to hundreds, and today, everyone thinks the Rose of Death really exists. It's hilarious. Everybody claims it's true, but who has really seen them? Spray of Flowers waved his arms as he told the story. After hearing how the Rose of Death came about, Yi Wanwan froze and was in disbelief. That terrifying organization is actually a character produced from a stack of manuscripts. And it was written by nameless Nya when he was how old? Thinking it through, Yi Wanwan still thought it didn't quite make any sense and she looked at nameless Nya and the others suspiciously. You simply lost a stack of manuscripts and you want me to believe this is true, do you think I'm a fool? Fortunately, nameless Nya and his father wrote about the Rose of Death. What if they wrote about a superhuman, huh? Boss Yi, you can't put it that way. If it was some ordinary folks, I guess they wouldn't have even bothered looking at a manuscript when they broke into a house, right? But you need to know that this manuscript went missing from the Nya household in Europe, so nobody questioned its credibility at all. Furthermore, Old Master Yi and Captain didn't use the standard story writing style to describe the Rose of Death. They wrote it in the form of a recount which made everyone believe it completely without any doubt, the devotee said. This is all in the past. Let's not talk about it. Anyway, didn't I ban everyone from talking about the Rose of Death? Nameless Nya said. Nameless Nya never thought those few words he penned when he was little, this power he fabricated, would become a real person in other people's eyes. Nameless Nya didn't seem to be lying and judging by the expressions of the devotee, Spray of Flowers and the others. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but believe their words. She was extremely surprised. Who exactly is this nameless Nya? Just a manuscript that he and his father wrote spread throughout the world and actually caused everyone to believe it. Even the Sea family hadn't suspected a thing. In addition, from what Nameless Nya said just now, he stopped the news of the Rose of Death from spreading, and coincidentally, the Rose of Death vanished without a trace in the past last 10 years. There was no news about them aside from the time when she disguised as their leader. Which part of this group before her was so sacred? How could they have such great influence? But Yi Wanwan really couldn't understand one thing. With their skills, why did they have to worry about having enough food and warm clothes? Anyway, this group of people wasn't simple, so Yi Wanwan didn't completely believe their words. Who knows, they might be trying to con her, but Yi Wanwan couldn't really think of a reason why Nameless Nya would want to con her. Chapter 775. Oh right, Boss Yi, why did you ask about the Rose of Death? Spray of Flowers asked out of curiosity. Yi Wanwan thought about it before she replied. This time, we're going to act as this organization, the Rose of Death. I'll be the Black Widow, and all of you will act as the members of the Rose of Death. Upon hearing what Yi Wanwan said, all of them were stunned. She wants us to act like the Rose of Death. Previously, Nameless Nya had actually forbidden any news regarding the Rose of Death from leaking out. Even old Master Nya agreed his manuscript caused this groundless organization, so he supported Nameless Nya's decision. And right now, this famous Yi actually wanted the original creator, Nameless Nya, to act as the rubbish Rose of Death. Boss Yi, what's so great about the Rose of Death? How about we act as my Nya family? My Nya family is much better than the Rose of Death in every way. What do you think? I'll act very naturally and give you a good price. Nameless Nya walked to Yi Wanwan and did his sales pitch. Hearing that, Yi Wanwan looked at Nameless Nya like she was looking at a fool. Go on, keep bragging, better than the Rose of Death, huh? No way, just act as the Rose of Death. Yi Wanwan was firm and didn't allow Nameless Nya to negotiate at all. Whether the Rose of Death existed or not, she wouldn't change her plan. If this Rose of Death, organization and leader, Black Widow, were all just made up and didn't exist at all, that was better, then it meant that nobody had seen the Rose of Death before. Maybe she should take this name, Black Widow. Then. I'm not acting. Nameless Nya shook his head adamantly and seemed like he wouldn't budge. Oh, I'll just tell your nephew that you hired me and my boyfriend to disguise as his parents, then, Yi Wanwan said indifferently. Don't. Famous Yi, we can talk things through. When Yi Wanwan brought the little devil up, Nameless Nya broke out in a cold sweat instantly. Nameless Nya was neither afraid of the heavens nor earth. He was only afraid of one thing, his nephew. Then are you acting or not? Yi Wanwan smiled and looked straight at Nameless Nya. Yes, I'll act. I'll act, all right. Nameless Nya was helpless and could only agree. Even if Yi Wanwan changed her mind at the last minute and decided not to pretend to be the little devil's mother, the threat of telling the little devil would also be enough to choke him, much less actually telling the little devil the truth. Hence, Nameless Nya thought it through and under immense pressure, he finally decided to give in. Captain, we'll be wearing the silver masks anyway. Nobody will know you're the one acting. The brick-moving foreigner was very witty and analyzed the situation for Nameless Nya. That's right. Nameless Nya slapped his thigh. We'll be wearing the silver masks anyway. With that said, Nameless Nya looked around. Where are the masks? When they left, they didn't bring any masks at all. I have them here. Yi Wanwan smiled mysteriously and opened the suitcase she brought along. In the suitcase, there was a black veil, black chiffon dress, a few silver masks and a couple of black windbreakers with roses embroidered on them. Famous Yi, you're prepared. Nameless Nya stared at the silver masks and windbreakers in the suitcase and was dumbstruck. He felt like this Boss Yi probably didn't intend to negotiate with them at all and directly reached a decision herself. She even prepared all the props. Chapter 776. After some time, Nameless Nya put the silver mask and windbreaker on. He looked quite legitimate and almost identical to the rose of death that Yuanwan had in mind. What are you guys waiting for? Nameless Nya looked at Spray of Flowers and the devotee. Hearing his commands, the devotee shook his head. Captain, you're afraid of being recognized, but we aren't, so we don't need to put on the disguise, right? They weren't the ones who wrote the manuscript anyway. Furthermore, this outfit was really embarrassing. Before Nameless Nya could say anything, Yuanwan looked at the devotee. You guys have to dress up as well. Otherwise, how are you going to disguise as the Rose of Death? Didn't you say it's most important for a family to stick together? With Nameless Nya and Yuanwan pressuring them, Spray of Flowers, Brick-Moving Foreigner, and the devotee were left with no choice as they changed into their Rose of Death disguises. Captain, when you wrote about this Rose of Death organization, why did you make them wear masks and capes? I think the members of the Rose of Death should all cross-dress, only then would they be worthy of this name. Spray of Flowers looked at the windbreaker he was wearing and didn't seem too pleased. Yuanwan, luckily, Spray of Flowers wasn't the one who wrote the manuscript. I'm writing about a secret organization, not some perverted organization. Nameless Nya gave Spray of Flowers side-eye. Captain looks so handsome even when he's mad, my maiden heart is exploding. Spray of Flowers couldn't help it and was about to pounce on him, but Nameless Nya glared at him. Captain, ignore that bloody pervert. We still have someone who hasn't changed into his outfit. The devotee pointed to the iceberg man lying on the ground. Hearing what the devotee said, Nameless Nya, Yuanwan and the others immediately looked at the ground. As expected, the iceberg man adjusted himself to a comfortable position and laid on the ground. Iceberg man, ? Get up right now. Nameless Nya said sternly. Iceberg man, your father has been traveling for so many years. I've seen all sorts of violent storms and winds, but this is my very first time meeting someone as lazy as you, the devotee said. Brick-Moving Foreigner, amazing. Iceberg man. Spray of Flowers, go help him get changed. Nameless Nya ordered. Captain is so nice. I'll go help my hubby change his clothes now. Spray of Flowers strutted towards the iceberg man. The iceberg man stood up in a split second. He took the mask and windbreaker unhappily and changed into them unwillingly. Hubby, what do you mean by this? I was so willing to help you get dressed, yet you gave me the cold shoulder. Humph. Spray of Flowers pouted. Get lost. It was rare that the iceberg man spoke. He must have really disliked him. Before Spray of Flowers could continue, Yuanwan suddenly made a silent gesture. Shortly after, Nameless Nya and the others looked in the direction of Yuanwan's line of sight. A few armed men walked out of that factory. Those armed men were guarding the factory outside and kept looking around them. Look. After some time, Yuanwan pointed towards the bottom left. A couple of off-road vehicles slowly stopped behind the factory and about a dozen people came out from them. These people were all dressed in camouflage gear and were probably the mercenaries Yuanwan heard about. At this moment, those people were creeping toward the factory. Hold it. The armed men guarding the factory saw those mercenaries. Chapter 777, yeah, they found us, what should we do, it's all your fault. I already said to stop the car further away, the car is right beside the factory, any human being would hear the noise. Among this group of mercenaries, there was a young, extremely cute and sweet-looking little Lolita. I stepped on the brakes, but the car wouldn't stop, so what could I do, huh? I already said I can't drive, yet all of you forced me to. Actually, I wanted to simply knock them all down, a lovable fatty spoke with apparent grievances. You can't even drive a car and you eat so much every day, what a waste of resources. A very good-looking man with long hair picked his nails and sneered, they found us the second we got out of the car. What should we do, what should we do? Then the good-looking long-haired man immediately punched the fatty in the chest. Whoa, Could you not use your little fist to punch my chest? The fatty said, displeased. Baby, so what if they saw us? With Changji around, what's there to be afraid of? Standing in front of the long-haired man was a bulky and bearded man. Hearing that, the long-haired man leaned on the chest of the bearded man. Changji, you're the best, much better than those darn fatties. With Changji around, I'm not afraid at all. Ha, baby, you don't have to be afraid at all. Changji is here. Even if the ceiling collapses, I'll be there to hold it up for you. The bearded man grinned. Oh my, the two of you should be more mindful, this is a public space. The fatty looked at the bearded man in contempt. Before the bearded man could say anything, an old man slowly emerged from this group of mercenaries. The old man looked glum and his eyes were shrouded in darkness. Stop this nonsense and take care of those few dogs first. Let me do it, let me do it. The little Lolita leaped out and strode forward. At this moment, the armed men guarding the area looked at each other when they saw a cute and sweet-looking little Lolita walking toward them from the group of mercenaries. Big brothers, you guys look really ugly, but all of you can choose a relatively cuter way of dying. I'll list them: getting poisoned, getting shot, a hand grenade explosion, getting bombarded or getting killed by a dagger. What do you guys think, which is better? The little Lolita looked at those armed men and giggled. Courting death, huh? In an instant, those men had their guns aimed at the little Lolita. However, before their fingers could pull the trigger, there was a flicker of cold light in the air. Pop! Pop! Tisk! Those armed men couldn't even scream in time and a dagger was thrust into the space between their brows. The little Lolita clapped her hands and smiled innocently. I think that, being killed by a dagger is the cutest, oh. Immediately after the Lolita spoke, the armed men fell to the ground. What do you think? Amazing, right? After the little Lolita took care of those armed men, she turned around and looked at the group of mercenaries behind her. She bent over and made a funny face. Wow, I think I should have just driven over them just now. The fatty stepped forward and laughed. Stop talking crap. The old man waved. Today, we must find that item and kill them all no matter what. The group of mercenaries then slowly made their way into the factory. Chapter 778. This isn't about the money at the hilltop. The devotee turned to Yuanwan after he saw the group of mercenaries entering the factory. Boss, that's a bunch of exotic people, huh? I've never seen such strange mercenaries before. Spray of Flowers nodded. A bunch of fools, the brick-moving foreigner said in a serious tone. Iceberg Man, N. At this moment, the corners of Yuanwan's lips started twitching. Who gave them the courage to call other people weird? Aren't they the weirdest bunch? Boss Yi, did you bring us here to act in a show or watch a show? The devotee was confused. Nameless Nya and the others still had no idea of Yuanwan's plan. It's like this, our mission this time is to save that group of mercenaries, Yuanwan explained. Save that group of mercenaries? Spray of Flowers was doubtful. Why should we rescue those mercenaries out of the blue? Boss Yi, those mercenaries seem to be going in to wreck the place. Do they even need us to rescue them? The devotee asked. Nameless Nya and the others didn't know, but Yuanwan knew very well how much they needed help. In her previous life, this group of mercenaries was mostly wiped out at this very spot. There were several highly trained experts keeping watch inside that factory, awaiting their arrival. How troublesome. I don't want to rescue them, Spray of Flowers said. Brick-moving foreigner, I'm hungry, feel like eating shit. Iceberg Man, each person gets an additional $1,000. Yuanwan had no choice but to resort to this. Spray of Flowers and the devotee's eyes glistened instantly. Devotee, Boss Yi, how do we rescue them? Spray of Flowers, we must save them. How could we simply fold our arms and watch them die? Is this our way of doing things, huh? Wouldn't it hurt our consciences? How would we sleep at night? Brick-moving foreigner, we must rescue them. This isn't about the money, nameless Nya, we'll listen to Boss Yi. Iceberg Man, Yi Wanwan stepped forward and told everyone her plan. At the same time, there was the sound of gunfire followed by a miserable howl coming from the factory. Not long after, those mercenaries who snuck into the factory were all forced outside. You guys dared to come back, huh? A middle-aged man looked at the group of mercenaries and sniggered. You bastard! You hired us at a high price to obtain that piece of good. After we completed our task and handed it to you, you said you never gave us this task at all and pushed the blame onto us. The old man looked at the middle-aged man coldly. HNG, that's your stupidity. The middle-aged man sneered. Never mind about that. I can't be bothered to waste my time speaking to people who are going to die. I've hired Lee San Yi and Dr. Skeleton. I'd like to see who'll be the dead one here. The middle-aged man turned to a white-haired elderly doctor dressed as a young man and smiled widely. Gentlemen, I have to trouble the both of you today. Upon hearing that, the white-haired elderly man waved. Since I've taken your money, I'll definitely do the work for you. This group of mercenaries will die here today. Seeing these two people, the mercenaries furrowed their brows like they were looking at incoming enemies. The white-haired elderly was Lee San Yi and the young man was Dr. Skeleton. These two people were great and well-known killers. Mind your own business. One of the mercenaries scowled. However, the moment he said that, Lee San Yi was provoked as he raised his hand. The mercenary had no idea what happened. He started spitting fresh blood from the slap and his body was flung across the room like a broken kite. Chapter 779, Unrealistic Acting. Ha ha ha, you're the amazing Lee San Yi indeed. Boss Zhou nodded continuously. At this moment, the elderly mercenary was secretly thinking of a counterattack. This Boss Zhou already knew they would return and had placed traps in the factory. They were confronted by firearms and weapons the moment they stepped in. At this moment, with over 10 guns pointing at them, if they weren't tied with explosives around their bodies, they would have already been killed. Changji, what should we do? We're going to die, the long-haired guy cried. Baby, don't be afraid. With Changji around, you don't have to be scared at all. Who do they think they are, huh? The bearded man sneered. However, the second he said that, he received a brutal tight slap from Lee San Yi. How dare you, old man, try touching me again if you dare. The bearded man glared ferociously at him. Slap. Upon hearing that, Lee San Yi gave him another slap. You, the bearded man clenched his fists. You're very obedient. Since you're such a good boy, I won't make things difficult for you. Changji, you're amazing. You're so calm and generous. The long-haired man was basically worshipping him. HNG, of course, baby. If this old thing wasn't so obedient, I would have punched him to his death already. But seeing that he's so old and obedient, I'll let him off. The bearded man ridiculed him. Oh my, with death approaching, you're still showing off, huh? The fatty looked at the bearded man, shocked. How annoying, we've been played, this isn't cute. Not cute, I don't want to die. The little Lolita whined, in tears. All of you must die right here today. The doctor dressed as a young man curled his lips and looked very devilish with a shiny surgical scalpel swinging in his hand. Before the young man could continue, he saw something on the nearby hilltop from the corners of his eyes. At that moment, the smile on his face froze and he rubbed his eyes instinctively. Then he continued looking towards that hilltop. All he saw was a woman wearing a black vintage hat. Her face was covered by a black veil as she slowly made her way down the hill and walked towards them. Behind that woman were 5 people wearing silver masks and dressed in black. Judging by their sizes, they should all be men. Rose of Death. Terror appeared within that young man's eyes instantly. He was in disbelief. That style of dress was certainly the attire of the rumored Rose of Death. Although there hadn't been any news of the Rose of Death for nearly 10 years, it was said that the Rose of Death had reappeared in the nearby country B. Boss show. Li Sanyi and the others were completely stunned as well. That attire. Rose of Death. The little Lolita widened her eyes and couldn't believe it. The elderly mercenary and everyone else was flabbergasted too. Very soon, Yuan, Nameless Nya and the others arrived. Before Yuan could speak, Nameless Nya suddenly took a step forward and said coldly, "I am Nameless Nya. Give me some face and let them go." Yuan, are you a pig? Name. Nameless Nya. Hearing that, Li Senyu was stunned. What Nameless Nya? Nameless Nya, you're kidding. The young man looked at Nameless Nya. This Nameless Nya, even if the Black Widow from the Rose of Death sees him, she has to be polite and humble herself before him. How could he be a member of the Rose of Death? What a joke. Captain, we are now disguising as the Rose of Death. The devotee stepped forward and spoke softly so only Nameless Nya could hear him. Oh, Nameless Nya returned to his senses, looked at Li Sanyi and the others and spoke again, I'm a member of the Rose of Death. I want all of you to give us face. Do you think our Rose of Death doesn't deserve that? The corners of Yuan's lips twitched. This acting is a little too unrealistic, huh? Chapter 780, Did you just hit me? Old thief, I'm a member of the Rose of Death. Have you guys never heard of the Rose of Death? Nameless Nya howled. Seeing how Nameless Nya was letting himself go and being so expressive, Yuan only wished to turn back time, allowing her to pick a different actor. She suddenly realized Gong Su's acting wasn't so bad after all. Compared to this, Gong Su's acting could be perceived as godlike. At this moment, the iceberg man placed the coffin on the floor and laid in it. There was a loud bang as he shut the coffin tight. Yuan, I should have expected this. Currently, only the devotee and spray of flowers were in front of Yuan. It could be considered a pass for these two actors. Old thing, let them go right now. I, Rose of Death, will spare your lives. Nameless Nya lost himself in his character and was unable to free himself. At that point, Yuan really wanted to step forward and ask Nameless Nya if this was what he envisioned when he was writing about the members of the Rose of Death. The group of mercenaries stared blankly at Nameless Nya. Is this really a member of the Rose of Death? You old, undead thing. Didn't you hear what I said? Act accordingly. Otherwise, your father will stab you to death. My blade goes in red and comes out clean. Nameless Nya yelled. Captain, it's, my blade goes in clean and comes out red, you made a mistake, spray of flowers corrected him. Hearing that, Nameless Nya nodded and continued, that's right, my blade goes in clean and comes out red. You're the Black Widow from the Rose of Death. Li Sanyi stared at Yuan, intrigued. He didn't care about Nameless Nya's request at all. Yuan, can I choose not to talk? Outrageous. You old thing, who do you think you are? How dare you speak to our boss like that? Our boss loves men and showers in fresh blood, are you not afraid at all, huh? Nameless Nya shouted. Ha, the doctor dressed as a young man sneered, I thought it was really the Rose of Death, but in the end, it's a bunch of lunatics. The mercenaries looked at Yuan and shook their heads, they really thought the Rose of Death had arrived, but now it seemed like. You said you guys are the Rose of Death? Li Sanyi looked at Nameless Nya and scoffed. Old thing, you still don't get it? Nameless Nya asked. You said you're a member of the Rose of Death? The corners of Li Sanye's lips lifted. Old thing, isn't it obvious enough? Nameless Nya sneered. I heard that every member of the Rose of Death is highly skilled. Since this is the case, why don't we have a little spar? Let me see if this rumor is true, Li Sanyi laughed. I don't want to fight you, it's not nice if I hurt you, Nameless Nya said. Ha, Li Sanyi, they're just a bunch of lunatics. Don't bother with their motives, just kill them all. A menacing grin appeared on the young doctor's face. Sure. Lee Sanyi nodded. Then he raised his right arm and the shadow of his palm flashed across. In the next second, Lee Sanye's palm landed on the chattering Nameless Nye's lower abdomen. Nameless Nye kept quiet all of a sudden and looked at his abdomen instinctively. Oh. A tinge of doubt appeared in Lee Sanye's eyes. This guy is alright? You. Did you just hit me? Nameless Nye slowly removed the mask from his face. His ice-cold eyes looked straight at the elderly man. It was just one look, yet it seemed to be able to sink a person into a hole. Chapter 781, Amazing, Big Bro. Nameless Nye looked indifferent. His eyes were unmoving. Captain, he hit you first. Spray of Flowers hurriedly said. Lee Sanyi scoffed and hit Nameless Nye in his abdomen once again. This time, he used almost all his strength. However, Lee Sanyi was left in disbelief. This man before him didn't even wince, and after receiving this blow from him, he didn't have the slightest injury at all. You are really courting death. A cold light flashed in Nameless Nye's eyes. Nobody saw what moves he made, but in the next second, he grabbed Lee Sanyi by the neck. This enormous strength left Lee Sanyi without any room to retaliate. This well-known killer was akin to a newborn baby in Nameless Nye's hands. Nameless Nye grabbed him by his neck and slowly lifted him off the ground. Lee Sanye's face turned red, his eyes filled with blood vessels and both his arms flailed wildly towards Nameless Nye. If an ordinary person had to endure those blows, he or she would have been shocked to death. However, it didn't have any effect on Nameless Nye at all. The elderly mercenary looked at Nameless Nye, completely stunned. He knew very well how powerful Lee Sanye's blow was, and the mercenaries might not be able to defeat him even if they combined their strength together. But in that young man's hands, Lee Sanyi couldn't even fight back. You're courting death. That young doctor's scalpel was immediately tossed in Nameless Nye's direction. However, before it could get close to his body, Nameless Nye caught the scalpel with his left hand. Interesting, Nameless Nye glanced at the young doctor before retracting his gaze. I didn't want to cause any trouble at first, but you guys are apparently a little too ignorant. Nameless Nye spoke before he used more strength. The cracking of bones resounded. Everyone widened their eyes as they watched Lee Sanye's neck getting crushed by Nameless Nye. SSS. This scene made everyone gasp. Just now, everyone was doubting whether or not this group of people was truly the rumored Rose of Death. But at this current moment, everyone was suspecting that even if it was the rumored Rose of Death, they shouldn't be so terrifying. Swish. Nameless Nye's right arm waved and simply flung Lee Sanye's corpse over 100 meters away. Following that, Nameless Nye strode over to the doctor dressed as a young man. At this moment, the young doctor was flustered. It's been a long time since anybody dared to attack me. Nameless Nye looked at that young doctor and spoke coldly. Upon seeing the enraged Nameless Nye, Spray of Flowers and the devotee looked at each other. Those people really didn't know better and dared to attack their captain. Truly, the ignorant knew no fear. Yi Wanwan looked at Nameless Nye, surprised. She didn't expect Nameless Nye had this side to him. Especially the frightening strength and vigor Nameless Nye displayed just now. Even Yi Wanwan was breaking out in a cold sweat. That wasn't the Nameless Nye she knew. He was a freak with a formidable aura around him. Come over. Nameless Nye looked at the young doctor and chuckled lightly. What do you want? The young doctor knitted his brows and looked at Nameless Nye. Swish. Suddenly, a sound echoed throughout the area. In the next second, the entire place fell into a dead silence. All they saw was Nameless Nye's palm appearing out of nowhere. The young doctor didn't know what happened as his entire body flew 10 meters away. Slam! The young doctor's body smashed the gigantic pillar in front of the factory into pieces. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.